Hello, this is Bwana from Bwana.tv, and today I'm going to conduct an iPhone 3G review. This is the iPhone 3G 16GB model. This is the white model. When my wife and I went to buy it, they were out of the black, but we weren't too heartbroken because we don't care about the color. We were going to get a case anyway, and I haven't found a case yet, but we're definitely in the market for a case. So, if you remember, if you've been following me for at least a year and you've been to my blog at Bwana.org, you know that I conducted an iPhone review when I got the first iPhone. And when I did that review, I listed a bunch of pros and cons for that particular unit. And I'm happy to say that Apple they weren't listening to me, I'm sure, but they have addressed 3 of those particular issues via software updates. So before I talk about the hardware, I'm going to briefly dive into the software improvements of iPhone software 2.0. Number one, the first thing that I complained about was that there was no ability to add ringtones to the iPhone, and you were stuck with the 15 to 20 bland iPhone ringtones that were available then. But since firmware 1.1.2, Apple has updated the iTunes software as well as the iPhone software so that you can add your own custom ringtones. Now they're going to charge you, they charge a fee on top of the music you buy from iTunes. But I posted a video up on YouTube.com and Bwana.tv and Blip.tv on how to do a free iPhone ringtone trick just by changing the extension. There's also programs out there like Ambrosia's iToner, which allow you to do it for free, and there's a ton of other things for Windows. And ever since this announcement, there have been a ton of applications that allow you to use your own music that you bought to make ringtones. The next thing that I complained about was the lack of customization. Now back then I complained that you couldn't customize the standby screen. Everything was pretty much set in stone the way it was. Now, while Apple hasn't completely addressed this, they have given you the ability to add custom shortcuts and add custom icons to your home screen. As you can see here on my iPhone, I have several shortcuts and icons. But back when I reviewed the first unit, you weren't even able to do that. You were stuck with what you had, unless you, of course, hacked your iPhone. And finally, the last thing was that I complained that the iPhone needed applications. And when I did my first review, there was no jailbreaking, there was no custom applications. You were just stuck with what the iPhone gave you. And since then, we have, number one, you can hack or jailbreak your iPhone and get a ton of applications. But most notably from Apple is that you now can use the iTunes App Store, which was released on July 11th. So all 3 of those concerns were addressed via software upgrades and updates. So that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about, mainly from the software perspective, because I want to talk about this hardware unit, the iPhone 3G. This is the 16GB model. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it out into basically 3 sections. I'm going to talk about the things that I like, the good things about the iPhone 3G. Then I'm going to talk about some of the shortcomings, the bad things about it, and then I'm going to conclude, just from my overall impressions and my recommendations if you're in the market for a new phone. So first impressions, I'm going to start with activation, because this was a pain point for a lot of people on release day. I didn't get mine on release day. I got it 2 weeks ago, thanks to the generosity of community members' donations, mostly by Jim48116, who donated almost all the funds to have me and my wife get an iPhone 3G. So I thank you, and I hope that I can, I can fulfill what you expect of this review, as well as give you some more cool videos in the future. So the first impressions were with regards to activation. We went to the Apple Store not expecting a line. Because this was weeks after release, we didn't expect the line. So when we got to the Apple Store here at our local Apple Store, we saw a long line, and we had to wait in it for about an hour. So this lady comes up to us and she says, well, you need to make sure that you don't have an AT&T discount on or a discount plan on your AT&T account, because if you do, we're not going to be able to activate your phone here at the Apple Store. So I was like, oh, well, I used to have I used to have a discount plan, but well, I got rid of it last year when I got my new iPhone. So I'm good. I'm good. I'm doing fine. I'm just gonna wait in line. She's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. I learned to eat those words. So the guy in front of me, he had a discount and he was able to get through scot-free. I still don't know how he did it. But as you can probably guess now, when we got to the front of the line, the guy was trying to activate our new phones, and lo and behold, I had a flag on my account that I had a previous discount on my phone. Now, I don't get a discount on my plan, so I don't know how that discount was still there, but it was still on my record. He couldn't continue with the activation. So I was dejected. I was heartbroken. I just wanted to roll over and just, I don't want to go out. But my wife convinced me to stay. She convinced me to go to the AT&T store right around the corner. I didn't even know there. I knew there was one there, but I was too messed up in the brain to remember it. And we went to that one, and we went to the AT&T store, and they removed the discount from my record. So we went back to the Apple store. I was still dejected. My wife was like, do you want me to go ask them, can we skip the line? Can we go to the front? Because we waited in line. I'm like, do what you want. I don't care. So I got the guy's business card here because I want to recommend them. Clayton Hackett. I just dropped it, so I stepped on his business card. But Clayton Hackett was the guy who helped us at the Apple Store, and he was so nice. He let us basically continue where we left off. We didn't have to wait in line again because the wait in line was long. They were running out of supplies, and he allowed us to continue. And long story short, we were able to get our phones activated after that little ordeal. So that was our little activation glitch hiccup, but it was a lot. It wasn't nearly as bad as a lot of people had on release day, because as you probably already know, on release day there were a lot of glitches and server crashes, and people just couldn't activate their iPhones. So it was partly my fault that we didn't get our phones activated smoothly, because we don't have a freaking discount, and we did. So. Now, as far as when we got home, I conducted an unboxing. You can go to my blog at Bwana.org or Bwana.tv or YouTube.com or Blip.tv, the many places where I post my video. I have an unboxing video, and as you can see from that video, the boxing and the casing of the iPhone is almost exactly the same as the first gen, so I'm not going to focus on that too much. It was nicely and neatly packaged. It was very well done, typical Apple fashion. And I wasn't surprised in the least bit. So now I'm going to go ahead and dive into just how the unit feels. As you may or may not know, the back of the iPhone is now plastic, and it's now, I don't know if it was metal or some sort of a metal alloy or some exotic space age formula, but this one's plastic, and people complained about it, that it felt like it was going to break. It does. It feels okay in the hand. I mean, they have a new beveled corners here around it, so it feels really comfortable in the hand. And it doesn't feel like it's going to break while it's in my hand. But if I were to drop this, if I were to do a Bwana drop test, this thing would be in a million pieces. You saw the Will It Blend video. Will it break? If I drop this thing will shatter. So I got to get a case ASAP, and my wife and I are still looking for a case. But it feels good in the hand. It felt lighter to me. And some people said it wasn't lighter, but it felt lighter, and that's a welcome thing, because the previous iPhone, the first gen iPhone, felt like a tank. It wasn't heavy, but it felt sturdy, and it had some weight to it. This one, it was a little bit lighter. You can tell they cut back on some of the supplies. So now I'm going to dive into the good things that I like about the iPhone 3G. And first thing I'm going to start with, obviously, is the 3G speeds. Now, one of the improvements on the iPhone 3G is now it supports 3G networks, and the 3G network is a faster network connection when you're out and about on the phone network. Now, you can use Wi-Fi on the iPhone as well. This isn't Wi-Fi. This is called 3G. Before 3G, there was a speed called Edge, and Edge is almost, you can think of it as not the modem of phone speeds, but like the ISDN modem of phones. But 3G is notably faster, and I conducted a speed test while I was out. I was out yesterday getting some of these. I'm a comic book nut, so I got Final Crisis and some other things. But anyway, back to the iPhone. I was out and I conducted a speed test, and my download speed was 1.13 megabits per second down and 137 kilobits per second up, which is very, very good in my mind. I was highly impressed, and I think I had almost full signal. Yeah, and yeah, I got the screenshot on Bwana.org, and it was full signal in the 3G network, so that was very good in my mind. I was getting blazing speeds, so the 3G speeds on the iPhone, top notch. The next thing is the GPS chip, and that's the Global Positioning System chip on the iPhone. And I believe that this is a great addition to the iPhone 3G, not only because you can use Google Maps to pinpoint your location and find directions and things like that, but the tie-in to the applications, the tie-in to the social applications such as Looped, and Twinkle is another one. There's a social network tied around Twitter, which you can pinpoint your location very, very accurately to denote where you are and who's using Twitter around you. And there's also the Where application, Yelp. Now these are some of the software aspects, but tied in with the GPS chip, it's really accurate and it really enhances the experience. So I gotta say the GPS, is definitely a winner. And the third thing is that with the with the 3G technology, you are now able to talk on the phone and use the data connection at the same time. This is something you couldn't do on the Edge network. It was either one or the other. So now, if you're on hold or if you're in a boring meeting, you can go in and check your emails, surf the web, do what you got to do. But now you can surf the web while you're talking on the phone. And that's probably going to drain the battery a lot. That's something I'm going to get into a little bit, but that's something you can do, and I highly recommend that you give it a try if you got the 3G. And if that's one of the things that bother you about the first iPhone, that might be a reason to upgrade just for that feature alone. Especially if you sit through meetings like I do a lot, but I don't use my iPhone for meetings a lot. But if you do, you want to check your email and do other business while you're in a meeting or talking to somebody, that's a cool feature. Now let's move on to the drawbacks or the shortcomings. And no device is perfect, and the iPhone is a great phone. I love it. It does what I need to do, but it's not perfect. There are some shortcomings, and I'm not going to focus on the software shortcomings because they transcend across the 3G and the first gen iPhone. They don't discriminate on the 3G iPhone. So the first thing is obviously battery life. Now this thing has a 3G chip in it. Steve Jobs went on record to say that the iPhone 3G, or the previous iPhone, did not have a 3G chip because it would drain the battery way too fast. And that is something that I believe was a valid excuse, because now when I use 3G on this guy, the battery drains very fast. The first day I had it, I was just tapping around doing things. Next thing I know, the battery's halfway down. I was like, what in the world? So when I'm at home on Wi-Fi, I turn off 3G and I save a ton of battery life. But when I'm out and about, I turn on 3G, but I'm very conscious of that. Now the iPhone 3G is the best of breed in terms of battery life amongst 3G devices. That's kind of sad because it's not that great. So the other phones must be really bad. And I'm just like, man, there's no way I'm going to touch another 3G phone if the battery life is worse than this. So that is one of the big. Now the next drawback I want to talk about is the accessories that come with the iPhone. And I have a few accessories here that came with the iPhone. The first one is this AC adapter. Now let me pull this out. I'm scared I'm going to break it. Now the other one came with a brick, and if you look at this, it's kind of small, but it feels kind of flimsy. Even the cord, it feels flimsy to me. This to me felt cheap, and I was surprised because I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't even looking for this to feel this cheap. But I can definitely tell that Apple cut some corners with this guy right here. They definitely cut some corners. Now the next thing is the headset. I don't know what they did with the headset, but it's worse. My wife and I have been getting complaints from people we call that we sound like we're in a tunnel, or we sound low, and it's just glitchy. I don't know if it's software or hardware, but I got to attribute it to this, because when I used my old headset, I really didn't have these issues, but when I use this new one, I did. So I don't know. It just seems like the accessories on the iPhone 3G are not what they should be. And remember this guy here? Do you remember this? You remember this? This is called a cradle. This is a cradle for the iPhone. Yeah, you don't get one of these with the 3G. Forget it. No, you don't have a cradle with the iPhone 3G. They took it out completely. So they skimped on the accessories, and that's kind of a disappointment. And the next thing that I have a problem with is the hardware buttons. Now there's only 4 hardware buttons on the iPhone. Very little hardware buttons. But they feel kind of weird. It seems like it's really hard to press these buttons to do things. If I have to turn the volume up and down, I really have to press it now. If I have to hit the lock button on the top, I really have to hit it. And the home button, I have to press it maybe 3 and 4 times sometimes. It doesn't register. So it seems like the quality of the hardware buttons is not what it used to be. It's not a killer, something to get used to. But on the first gen iPhone, I didn't have this problem. Now at first, I thought that I just didn't give the phone time to break in. I was like, oh, it's brand new. But I looked at my notes of the first review that I did with the first iPhone, and going by memory, and I remember the buttons being something that I liked a lot. And I didn't have problems. When I pressed something, it worked. The buttons felt a lot more sturdier, and they actually registered when I did things. These feel like Apple changed some things. Like they went with cheaper materials, or now that things are plasticky, they take a little bit more work to press. And that could be why the thing feels a little bit lighter to me. I think on paper it says it's heavier, but it just feels lighter to me for some reason. Now, what's surprising is that they did that. I mean, Apple generally improves on these types of things, but it seems like it took a step backwards in terms of hardware quality. So my overall impressions, let's go ahead and talk about that. My overall impressions with the iPhone 3G. I like the iPhone 3G. I like it a lot. I believe that it's an attractive upgrade for those who are interested in the GPS features, those who want faster data and don't worry and don't mind the battery life, and you want to take advantage of the 3G network. Now, namely, if you don't have 3G in your area, you probably don't want to look at the iPhone 3G, because you're only going to get really GPS improvements in the new form factor. Maybe if you get the 16 gigabyte model, maybe you'll get more storage, but it all depends on your area. So look up your 3G coverage in your area first. But I find that I use this particular iPhone 3G more than I use my previous generation iPhone. Now, is that because of a new app store? I think so. I think it's because of the new software and the new apps that I'm getting. But at the same time, this is not a bad unit. This is a great phone. Still, even with the shortcomings, this is a great phone. I also want to mention some of the drawbacks of the carrier contract. Now, I'm with AT&T. We have to sign a 2-year agreement. The cheapest data plan is like $80 a month if you get the bare minimum everything. So it's pricey. So when you consider price, you really have to consider your carrier contract. I know Rogers in Canada is having a big brouhaha over the prices that they're charging, and it's not even unlimited data from what I recall. And other countries as well, their plans are even worse than what AT&T is. So consider that. But even with all of that, if I had to choose between the iPhone 3G and the original iPhone, I would choose the iPhone 3G every time. Even with the shortcomings, I would choose the 3G every time. Why? Because the 3G and the GPS add value to this phone. They do. And you're paying a smaller price than you did the first gen. Now, while the hardware may be a little bit cheaper in terms of quality, in my opinion, it's still a great phone, and I still recommend it. So even with all of that, it got a 9 out of 10 on my blog on Bwana.org. I wrote up a review. Everything I talked about, I've written it up on Bwana.org, and I gave it a 9 out of 10, as opposed to the 8.5 out of 10 I gave the first gen iPhone. So overall, I recommend the iPhone 3G. Now, if you're in the market for an iPhone and you want to know if you need to upgrade your iPhone, you want to buy a new iPhone, I would recommend waiting. This is why I would wait, because there are some software glitches that Apple hasn't worked out yet. And I haven't talked a lot about these glitches because they transcend across the 3G and the first generation iPhone. I would recommend, and this is key, I would recommend you wait to the next firmware upgrade or the next firmware update, which is touted to be firmware 2.1. I don't know when it's coming out. Nobody knows when it's coming out, but it has been released to developers for testing, and it's mainly geared towards fixing a lot of these glitches. I'm finding that the software is having crashy problems. I mean, it reminds me of 1.1.2, I think it was, or 1.1.3, where Safari would just crash a lot, and then Apple came out with a quick fix, with a release, and it fixed all those crashes. So I'm kind of sensing that's what it's like. Other people are having more serious problems, and I think that's a combination of hardware and software. I think most of my problems are software. I think the hardware unit I have is definitely intact. So I do recommend the iPhone 3G, but I would recommend you wait until the next firmware revision. Alright, this is Bwana from Bwana.tv, and this is my white 16GB iPhone review, and I give it a 9 out of 10 and a giant thumbs up.